those who criticize our generation forget who raised it, and also forget, or just don't have a clue, what position they have left us in. So it is our turn now to fix what has been done, and we must stand up, and we must stand up quickly for our next generation, for our grandchildren, before it's too late. So I just want to ask you one question, and that question is, what does freedom mean to you?
Here is Republicans changing the rules, specifically Rule 16, where if they don't like the delegates elected, they can replace them. The vast majority clearly say, no, we don't want Romney, we want Ron Paul. But you notice the teleprompter in the second clip in live time, it already says that the yeses have it. The yays have it. Here is that clip, and then we'll get to the devastating clips with Peter Schiff and others. Here it is.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Pending another chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no.
I told you that he was bought and paid for by the globalists and the entire agenda would continue. But they can't get open socialism under a Republican, so they put a Democrat in so they can take the blame. Now they're getting ready to put Romney in because they figure a new face will con you for a few years again. And there you just saw it, the whole thing rigged.
Mr. Wead,
yes.
What do you think of the RNC changing the rules at the last minute and not seating Ron Paul's all of his delegates that were elected?
Well, I think it's a mistake for them. I think it hurts them more than it hurts us. I mean, we're the future. We're the young people. We have overwhelmingly, our movement is supported by the youth of America. We have more Democrats than independents. Those are the people that a Republican Party would reach out to. It would have worked. We would have carried 11 states going into here, and that's why they cheated, because they had to stop it. And that's why they were even nervous here. They were here, they'd won it, and they still have to say the ayes have it. That lets you know how nervous they were. So we were a little closer than a lot of people think. I liked, for example, the fact they did that yay and nay vote, where they said the yays have it. I thought that was great. Even though we lost it, I thought it was great because the media was shocked. We've been trying to tell them this goes on at the caucus level, at the district conventions, at the state conventions. This is what we've experienced all the way, and they didn't know. So when they saw it themselves, they were a bit astonished. Some of them gasped. Well, that's how the party's being run.
But let's start with the rule change. The RNC pushed through a new rule that will forever change the way that Republicans choose their candidates. Rule 16 is for the election, selection, allocation, or binding of delegates and alternate delegates. Any statewide presidential preference vote for the Republican nomination for president in a primary, caucus, or a state convention must be used to allocate and bind the state's delegation to the national convention in either a proportional or winner-take-all manner. In layman's terms, that means there are no more free delegates to vote as they choose. And then part two, no delegate or alternate delegate who is bound or allocated to a particular presidential candidate may be certified if the presidential candidate to whom the delegate or alternate delegate is bound or allocated has, in consultation with the state party, disavowed the delegate or alternate delegate. Again, what does that mean? It means no delegate, even if elected by Republicans of that state, may serve as a delegate if the candidate and the state party decide they don't like them and they want to replace them. Conservatives, Tea Party members, and Liberty supporters immediately vowed a floor fight over this rule. On Tuesday morning, delegates from Virginia and Rhode Island were on their way to lead that fight when their bus driver refused to stop at the convention center 3 times, circling the building, then leaving the area altogether. And when they returned to the convention center, well, the delegates had already missed their chance to vote on this issue. One of those Virginia delegates, Matthew Hurt, tweeted as this was going on. Take a look. Morton Blackwell is on a bus outside the Rules Committee where he's needed to fight for grassroots conservatives. We have looped around the GOP convention twice and driven away from it. Rules Committee member Morton Blackwell still on the bus. So who is this Morton Blackwell that was trapped on this bus with Virginia delegates? Blackwell is a member of the RNC Rules Committee, and he was the most ardent advocate opposed to the rules change. Now, inside the convention hall, delegates who did make it, they were asked by Speaker of the House John Boehner to vote on adopting this new rule. Now listen as the vote is taken.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Any other chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it? How could the Speaker of the House determine clearly how many voted aye and how many voted no? Listen again, but this time to cell phone video from inside the crowd. Well, maybe there's a good reason, a really good reason, that Boehner claimed the ayes had it. Today, incredible cell phone video was released as delegates stood by and videotaped the teleprompter that Speaker Boehner was reading from. We're going to take this video full so you can read along for yourself.
Thank you for putting this question as order. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no.
So, the most controversial rule in the Republican Party history, according to countless conservatives, wasn't voted through at all. It was scripted. Despite the shouts of what at least half the room of delegates appeared to have been voting, Boehner just read along with the script.
Now, this is top Ron Paul advisor Doug Wead saying the Paul campaign did not attack Romney in Michigan because Romney threatened to drop a political A-bomb on the Liberty campaign and ruin Ron Paul's name forever.
The argument against going after Mitt Romney was that he had a tremendous amount of money. And he threatened to drop an A-bomb on us. He threatened to destroy forever the name Ron Paul by producing commercials that would, and advertising that would destroy his name and reputation.
If you've got this guy over here, and then Ron Paul has been cheated in the first few states like Iowa and Maine, where he did win,
And then there were two. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney and Texas Congressman Ron Paul are the only two candidates still vying for the Republican nomination. Tonight I'm going to show you two things. More of the fighting over delegates in Washington state and explain why that fighting is intensifying. Let's start in King County, Washington. The state of Washington has been holding its delegate caucuses as they're sending delegates on to the state convention, which will be held May 31st through June 2nd. Now, in order to choose those delegates, Washington is holding these delegate caucuses. And here's what happened in the King County 37th District Caucus over the weekend. The GOP representative is Lori Sotelo. Sotelo conducts the business of the caucus by holding a floor vote for a caucus chairman, and it happens correctly according to the rules. The problems start when a woman named Tamara Smilanich is voted in as caucus chairman. Sotelo begins to argue that because Tamara is a known Ron Paul supporter, the caucus cannot continue. Listen.
Ron Paul campaign does not have authority to rent this room. They have not provided insurance for this building. And Ron Paul campaign is Cameron Smilanich is a member of the Ron Paul campaign. And you do not.
She's not paid by the Ron Paul campaign.
You're the backup. And you do not have authority to run the meeting in this building. You will have 10 minutes before this building must be vacated.
To be clear on what is being said here, Sotelo claims that Smilanich is a Ron Paul operative, and therefore, in order for the caucus to continue, the Ron Paul campaign would have to pay for the insurance on the building and pay to rent the venue, which of course doesn't make sense at all. Nevertheless,
what I tried to explain to Tamara, what I explained to the Ron Paul campaign and their national campaign, and what I explained to Tamara in private, is that when a campaign, a political campaign, takes over a caucus, they are now, the national campaign, responsible for providing insurance, providing balloting, providing the liability for anything that goes on in this building.
The majority of people in the room begin to argue with Sotelo, asking what being elected caucus chair has to do with insurance liability, and then they even ask where the rule can be found in the list of Washington State GOP rules.
Can I request that the chair of the county party show us in the rules where it says that if a operative or not operative of any particular campaign gets elected to the chair position, then that campaign is then required to pay for the insurance and pay the rent.
That's just the way it works out with insurance coverage.
Where's that in the rules?
It works out with the insurance coverage.
And once again, the rules are not being followed. So the caucus is actually moved outside, where Emily Rinsink, who took much of that video, tells me that 11 delegates were voted on.
There were 11 total, and we got all 11 delegates for Ron Paul. I feel like there's this impression of Ron Paul supporters that we're here just to be disruptive and to infiltrate the party, but, and I can only speak for myself, but that's not what it's about. We want to get involved. I'm genuinely a conservative, and I just want to get involved in the Republican Party.
So why is there such a fight in the Republican Party? Isn't it really all over? Didn't Romney already pretty much lock up the nomination? Well, actually, no. And this is what I've been telling you for months now. At its state convention, Washington will select 43 delegates to the RNC. Now, according to the delegate count on RealClearPolitics.com, in the state of Washington, Mitt Romney has 25 of those delegates already in his corner. Ron Paul has 8. But that's not true, because in the state of Washington, none of those delegates have been selected. Another example, the state of Iowa, which will send 28 delegates to the RNC. Iowa, Real Clear Politics says Romney has 6, Santorum 7, and Paul has 1. But it's not true. Actually, in Iowa, half of the delegates were just selected over the weekend. 13 people who will choose 13 delegates. And now we know 13 slots, Ron Paul delegates. The other 10, we don't know yet. One more for you. The state of Minnesota, which will send 40 delegates on to Tampa. In Minnesota, half of the delegates are called congressional district delegates. The other half at-large delegates. Well, the state of Minnesota voted over the weekend for the congressional district delegates, and here's what we know. 20 of the 24 went to Ron Paul. The other 13 will be voted on May 18th and 19th. And that's what you need to know. A month ago, not one media source other than Reality Check was correctly counting delegates. Therefore, you had no idea that Ron Paul or any other candidate could still win Minnesota or Iowa. Many people thought it was a done deal. And yet, it just happened. And that's why the fight in the Republican ranks is not over. Every state with unbound delegates is now a battleground for those delegates. And that is Reality Check. Well, I've already shown you video out of Missouri where GOP officials attempted to railroad the selection of delegates at the St. Charles caucus. And I also showed you video out of Athens, Clark County, Georgia, where state officials steamrolled over caucus goers by forcing an unapproved slate of delegates down their throats. Well, now comes video out of Washington State, where local activists attempted to game the system by creating what they called a unity slate. Here's some of that video.
You are about to elect delegates to the state convention.
Right.
And who that is depends on your votes. Now, most districts don't have a majority for any of one of the 3 major candidates for president. None of them have majorities. So we looked at that and we said, why don't we create one group of people that represents all 3 campaigns, representatives from every 3 campaigns, and we'll put them on a list, and we'll ask all 3 campaigns' delegates, you, to vote for them.
So let me catch you up on what's going on here. This is at the Pierce County 2nd District Delegate Caucus. The man in the video is Alex Hayes. He's the executive director of Mainstream Republicans of Washington. It's not the same as the official Washington State Republican Party. Let's be clear about that. Hayes is trying to convince caucus goers to vote for a unity slate. He says he wants delegates who are Romney, Gingrich, and Santorum supporters to form a coalition in order to block the delegates of Ron Paul. Listen.
We didn't do this until we saw 3 legislative districts get taken over in King County by the Ron Paul folks, and we saw how they were willing to behave. So at that moment, we decided we had to be a bit more careful, and this represents that commitment of being more careful.
Now, to be clear, taken over by the Ron Paul folks? In King County, Paul supporters have shown up in large numbers, and they are winning through the process the delegate slots. Hayes, who says he is presenting this unity slate on behalf of the Romney campaign, says that he must do so because of the savagery of Paul's supporters.
Most years, we're not forced to do this. But this year, we have been forced to do this because of the savagery of the opposition we're facing. And so that's a pretty strong phrase. But if you had seen what it is like when they prevail and they take control, it is very bad.
And here is the clip of clips. Here we have, the fund manager, Peter Schiff, to his credit, I want to try to get him on next week, coming on going, yeah, here's Jesse Benton saying don't come to Paul Fest. But because, oh no, Jesse needs to be a big star at the RNC with all those mummies. Well, we can't, Peter, don't go to that. But Ron Paul showed up, didn't he? Didn't do a lot of promotion because they didn't want it to overshadow the precious RNC, but understood it would just turn down and make feel bad all these people that believed in you with their starry eyes. So Ron Paul had the cake and ate it too. He didn't promote it, but he did show up. And I guess Jesse Benton didn't get the memo because he's like, don't you go speak at that because it's a fringe. What's the exact quote? Peter Schiff reading a text he got from Jesse Benton about how the grassroots Paul Fest was fringe and the Paul campaign would not participate. Well, according to Jesse Benton, Ron Paul's fringe because he came and spoke at it. This is a major, major, major scandal, in my humble opinion. Here it is.
This is what I got from Jesse. You might want to reconsider Paul Fest. The thing is bad news. Why aren't you guys involved? I wrote that bad people organizing a big fringe element. You're hoping the event goes away.
Yeah, we got a bad rap the whole way along.
And again, I just got to say it. I mean, Jesse Benton is a disgrace. He really is a disgrace. Man, I am trying my best not to go after Jesse Benton, but I tell you what, he asked for it, man. He is asking for it. Whoa! But good for Ron Paul and good for Peter Schiff.